Still got paint all over my face. Right, so this week I thought I'd speak about just general bits and bobs I started doing. So moving back to Aberdeen, I joined a local swim club up here, and they implement a relatively new training standard that's in swimming at the moment, and that is USRPT, aka ultra short race pace training. So I thought I'd do a bit of research into it, get to know it a little better, because if you don't really know what you're doing, you're not going to get a lot out of it. So ideally, I kind of want to know what I'm doing so I know what to look for. So after scanning the internet, I came across a really good paper that summarized, it was produced late last year, 2019, and really summarizes where the knowledge is at the moment in terms of review for USRPT training. Now the paper's called USRPT in Swimming, Current Perspectives, by some people who I can't pronounce their surnames, and it basically just goes through all the reviews that have been taken to date and really all the good and bad factors about each. So the paper starts off summarizing what everyone looks for in terms of swimming capability, basically how you can effectively complete your race in the most efficient time, and that's through two primary factors. That's either your VO2 max, aka how much oxygen you can utilize and consume while moving, and then your biomechanical factors such as stroke length and stroke index. So basically how fit you are versus how good your technique is. Now each coach is different and will prioritize different things, but primarily overall each coach is looking for you to be as fit as possible with the maximum technique capability. And that's generally due to the more technique you've got, the more efficient you'll be, and the fitter you are, the better you'll be able to implement that technique and do it at a faster rate. So this is where USRPT comes in, because as it says in the name, it's race-paced training. So what it does is it focuses and specializes in the speed and velocity you need to condition your body to cope with, so that you can maximize and keep continuous flow of the most efficient technique that you can muster. So by focusing on one, it ends up also as like a domino effect affecting the next thing. So if you can get yourself fit enough, then you'll be able to hold your technique for longer, and vice versa. If you get better technique, then you should be able to get fitter, because you'll be expending less energy as you'll be more streamlined in the water. You'll be using less energy to get yourself from A to B, and thus you can then accelerate, which then means that you're getting fitter, which then means you can improve on your technique, and it just keeps building between each other. So in USRPT, like everything else, there's got to be a fundamental foundation, some base layer bricks that you can then build upon. And for USRPT, that is three factors. You've got your race-specific technique instruction, your race-specific psychology, and your race-specific conditioning. So your race-paced technique instruction is basically your biomechanics. It's your mind telling your body what it needs to do in order to maintain that velocity. So race-specific psychology is the cognitive engagement. Now this is where you're mentally actively thinking about what you need to be doing throughout your race, whether that's focusing on an early forearm, or when you go into the turn you know this is where you need to accelerate. It's basically your mental strategy on knowing how to get from A to B in the quickest amount of time. And the last one is race-specific conditioning. Now this is exactly what it sounds like. It's basically to make sure your body can adapt to the energy demands required to maintain the velocity you're racing with. So even if you take USRPT away from swimming, if we think about sport more in general, USRPT actually adheres to the 4 fundamental principles of training, no matter what you're doing. So that is specificity, overload, recovery, and individuality. All 4 of these things are exactly how they sound. Specificity is basically what you're about to race, focusing on that no matter which sport. Then we have overload. Now this is usually heard when people are lifting weights, but you're progressively overloading your body, causing tiny little stresses within the body, and that's what causes the adaptations and allows you to condition yourself to the fitness required. Then you have recovery. Same with all sports, same with all physical exercise. You need an adequate amount of recovery in order to benefit from any training you've done, because those little stresses need to repair for your body to adapt. And obviously if you're not getting enough recovery, there's no point. And then lastly, we've got individuality on a person by person basis. So with USRPT, it allows each swimmer to know exactly what they need to be doing rather than a collective. So what are the advantages with USRPT? One of the main things is that all athletes' training must be based on the dominant energy systems, technical skills, and motor abilities required for that race. And that way you're really specializing and focusing in on what you need to do, because your motor skills and your motor abilities will be different on each type of distance really, and each speed, each velocity you need to maintain. And with that, technical skills also change. So with USRPT, it allows you to really hone in on exactly what you need to do to get from point A to point B in what the time you need to do. And this is great because anything that can be quantified can be managed. The problem with high volume is if people say, right, you need to just get this done on this time, or you just need to bash out all these on a set interval, then you start to get lazy, you start to not think, you start coming to the wall, hitting it, then going off again, and not really thinking actively. Whereas in USRPT, you're going off you're using your personal best times and breaking that down. So you're working towards where you can currently, the fastest you can currently go, and then you're trying to work out what's good and what's bad within that time frame. Is it an issue with your fitness? Is it an issue with your stroke? Is it an issue with your turns? You can really start to identify, because you're repeating it over and over, you start to feel all the little nuances, especially the coaches on the side who will have more time to focus in rather than just the race. They're trying to see what you're doing wrong. They can do it before the race, in training, seeing all the little factors in real time, all the different issues within while you're training really. So these next items is where I think USRPT really comes into its own. The first one is it has the potential to reduce injury and early specialization. And by early specialization, I really mean in really young swimmers. And this is primarily because you're racing or you're swimming to your own speeds, you're not having to overdo it and overexcel something your body has not yet adapted to. And over a high volume training set, if you're consistently doing that, you could risk in your body just not adapting quick enough to that and causing issues within your own system with that, especially if you're like myself, a master swimmer, where you start to get the aches and pains in the groins and you really need to watch out for it, especially things like knees and shoulders. Is it allows you to reduce that right down, so then yes, you're increasing the intensity, but you're not doing it for high amounts of time, which allows for greater recovery in the long run. And then with early specialization, this is in the younger swimmers, is if you're doing high amounts of volume, obviously with swimming it's famous for just ridiculous amount of mileage within it, is if you're overloading certain parts, because it's very shoulder dominant, is you're basically causing yourself lining yourself up for injuries later on in life, or even now really. And what this does is it allows you to get stronger and quicker without having to just keep turning those shoulders over for 2 hours just non-stop, just churning out length after length after length, especially if it's, as I said earlier, your mind starts to switch off, your technique starts to worsen, and now what you're doing is you're putting your body under stress in a fashion that it won't efficiently work to. So if you've got perfect technique, it might work, but as soon as that technique starts to falter, you see it all the time with people doing it in the gym. The other good thing is that it reduces burnout. Now this is a great thing for anyone of any age, whether you're a youngster or whether you're like myself, you're a master swimmer, you've got a full-time job, you've got other life factors that dominate. Swimming's only really become kind of a hobby and just a way to stay fit at this point, is it reduces the aspect of burnout. And this is usually what causes a lot of people to quit swimming, because eventually with the high volume training, 90% of the time you just feel knackered, you feel shattered, you can never eat enough, you start to take your eye off the ball at work, and eventually you just get to a point where you think other aspects in life are just more important, and then swimming just goes by the wayside. By doing USRPT prevents that burnout. So yes, you're increasing the intensity, but you're doing it to your own capabilities. So if you're not making a time, you take a rest. And this can be on a day-by-day basis as well. So if you've had a really hard day in the office and you just didn't get a good night's sleep the night before and your body's not really feeling it, you're not causing it to do something that will overstress it. Because if you miss a time, you get to rest. And some days you might miss out more than others. And what it allows you to do is keep training at that optimum point. But yes, some days it might be fewer than others, but allows you to keep up there so that that muscle memory just remains. Now, the only issue I see at the moment with USRPT is because it is relatively brand new, is that there's not a lot of reviews done on it, not a lot of research at this point in time, especially not peer research where you're sitting down with athletes, experimenting, taking tests, trying to see whether it does optimize. Yes, there has been much evidence come to light in recent years, especially with Olympian Michael Andrew, who is basically just showcasing the capabilities of USRPT at the moment. But it does have close comparisons to HIIT training, the high intensity interval training, which a lot of people do in the gym and was a massive fad maybe a year or two ago. And there's tons of research on the benefits of HIIT out there. You can just type HIIT into Google and it'll give you tons of papers showcasing the benefits of that. And USRPT aligns with HIIT quite closely. So even if you weren't really into sport that much, even if you were just doing it to stay healthy and taking those sort of HIIT classes or that aspect of HIIT training in the gym to just keep yourself fit, well, this is a way where you can apply it to swimming. So without having to load yourself up, you can get in a pool and you can promote those same aspects in the pool. And I quite like that because it causes you to be able to cross-train more between different disciplines. So between swimming and running, or swimming and gym work, it allows you to condition yourself in more ways than one, which overall, even if it's not from an athlete point of view, but just from your whole rounding your body to be the best it can be, for me personally, I think it's just a better way to look at things because it allows you to adapt in different ways and prevents you from over specializing in one specific area, which might cause you to lose motor skills in other ways. So for instance, if you're just swimming all the time, you might lose that ability with your hip flexors to lift your knees up as high. It's very common between runners and cyclists. Cyclists maintain good hip flexor ability and movement, range of movement, whereas runners don't. It falls by the wayside. So with this kind of USRPT hit crossover, it's very good for just maintaining range of movements that you might otherwise lose. So that's the video today. It's just a wee bit of a summary. I quite like reading into all these papers about all the nerdy side of stuff I do on a day-to-day basis, so I might try doing more of these types of videos. I know it's still not very entertaining, because it's a very bland presentation. I need to get better at dropping in all these bits and bobs, but I kind of like it, so we'll see how we get on, kind of maybe adding in a couple of these every so often as well. See how we get on. But anyway, let me know if you enjoyed that. Peace!